Okay, so now we're recording. So I've got you Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Wednesday of next week. We're going to finish up Ordinary People. We're going to take a look at some film clips, probably on Wednesday, that are from the Academy Award-winning Ordinary People. It won for Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Supporting Actor, I believe, and it may have won Best Picture that year, believe it or not. And we'll also take a look at the movie preview for Dear Evan Hansen, give at least one of the songs a listen, and reflect on its lyrics. And then the goal is that hopefully for Friday will be a relatively kind of empty day, on a day that you guys have some final exams possibly. And so if people owe me work, certainly you want to have an eye on what you owe me. You want to try to get all missing work in as soon as possible, as quickly as possible, but as well done as possible as well, because we are coming to the end. We're almost there. Then on Wednesday of next week, there will be open book, open note, multiple choice test. It will be through Canvas. And so that's hopefully will be an opportunity for you to do well, and show how well you understand the text. Does anybody have any questions about this upcoming schedule? Yeah.
Is there any way, like, if we finish the study guides, if we can turn it in for extra credit?
So let me say now, yes, that I will open up an assignment where I will take the study guides for extra credit on the test. Okay, does that work?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And so that way, if you struggle with the test, it won't kill you necessarily. Okay. It won't be required. That will be an optional choice. But I will create that probably later on today. Okay. That's a fair question. Anything else? Other questions, comments, concerns? Okay. Also, only one of you right now that I know of is taking Advanced Placement English Literature and Composition next year. I want you to be aware, for those of you who are not taking AP or ACP or Ivy Tech, that English 12 is a course that is really designed for students who struggle with English. And so that is not a class for the majority of you. And I know for some of you, yeah, English is tough. We've all got our tough subjects. Math is mine. I'm not a math guy. That's why I teach English, right? So, we've got our strengths and we've all got our weaknesses. You want to really think about that, your English 12 option, and what is it that you are prepared to do. Don't rely on being lazy. Push yourself, be willing to do the work, and ultimately a dual credit or the AP class can be useful for you down the road. Please keep that in mind. We have twice as many regular English 12 classes scheduled for next year than we ordinarily have, and it is surprising to a lot of people. So, page 208, we're going to start with Ordinary People, chapter 26. See one in there?
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
You're welcome.
208, right?
Yes, 208. Very good. Chapter 26. On Sunday, at breakfast, his grandmother asks, "What time did you get in?" He knows that she knows. Well, your parents do that too, right? What time did you get in? We know. The light was on in their bedroom when he pulled into the drive. Off as he came up the stairs. I don't know. 12, 12:30? 1:30, she says. 1:30 then, he nods amiably, helping himself to the toast she has kept warm for him in the oven. The small breakfast nook is washed in sunlight. Sun glints off the jar of honey sitting on the table, filtering through the pale yellow curtains at the window. His head sings with an intricate melodic tune. Telemann, Marais, John Bull. He cannot remember, but he loves those fresh and unfamiliar instruments. The recorder, the harpsichord, they're simple statements of truth. And again, there's that callback to the beginning of the book. Those simple statements of truth. That first page. The simple statements of truth are a reason to get up in the morning, a guiding principle. He wonders what the weather is like in Dallas. Sunny, he hopes. Warm. So he's worried about his parents. How can you expect to get a decent night's sleep coming in at that hour? She's frowning across the table at him. I give up. How can I? Okay, thanks, Parker. She sighs. Everything's a joke with you, isn't it? Grandmother, you know something? I'm nuts about you, he says cheerfully. You're always agitating. I think it's great. You ought to run for president. No kidding. He gets to his feet, pushing the chair back. Where are you going? Outside to wash my car. Well, don't get chilled. It's not summer, you know. I know. It is a perfect day. The temperature is in the 50s. It threatens to break a record. And tonight, he will go to Janine's to study. 7:30. Thinking about it makes his skin ripple pleasantly, his stomach pull. A feeling you get going up in an elevator. Shouldn't plan ahead like this. Shouldn't expect minutes, hours, and the elevator comes down, you could hit the ground, but what a trip. Last night, he took her out again. The old Saturday night show date. Afterward, at Lombardi's, they had run into Phil Trewin and Shirley Day. Phil had talked about the four of them going bowling sometime, and Jen had said, "Oh, I'm a terrible bowler, ask Con." And Phil had said, "Hey, so am I, ask Con." And suddenly, he was the authority figure. Although he does not remember Trewin being a bad bowler. He was probably just being nice, making him feel important. Trewin is a nice guy. That is the truth. He would like to do something with him again. He liked the look of Janine and Shirley leaning toward each other across the table, the peach silk river flowing toward Shirley's dark curls. Everything looks washed and new this morning. The concrete, wet from melting snow, smells clean. The soap, sharply pungent. The water, cold as it runs over his hands. And another truth, that there are no secret passages to strength, no magic words. It is just something you know about yourself. Before last night. It is as if he knew it all along. He is strong. He is able because he is. After dinner, he and his grandfather sit in the living room, reading the Sunday paper, while in the kitchen, his grandmother does the dishes. He listens to the comforting sound of her bustling about, the cupboard doors banging loudly, the water going on and off with that peculiar groaning wail as the pipes protest. Another memory that belongs to this old and comforting house. He waits patiently for the sports section. His grandfather reads every article, chuckling, rattling the paper at the stuff he likes, grumbling and crossing his legs when something annoys him. He leafs through his section casually, reading a dull article on riverfront housing investments from beginning to end, testing his memory. He checks out his horoscope, home, family, your lifestyle are spotlighted. Taurus and Libra individuals figure prominently. He wonders about his lifestyle. What is it? He is becoming, Berger says. We are all becoming. We're all, every one of us, is in a state of becoming. And it goes along with that notion again of who am I? What does it mean to be becoming? What does that mean? It's very different from we are. Or I am. What does that mean? Ty, did you have a possibility there? Did you shoot your hand up?
I think that it means that we are changing into something different.
Yes, we are. So what does that mean? Always? Are we always changing into something different?
Some people change, some people stay the same. I guess it depends.
Okay. So what would you say if I told you that I am in a state of becoming? How am I changing? How might I be changing? Nothing is more constant than change. Thank you, Katie. Absolutely. Does that mean that we are not the same? So if I am still in a state of becoming, does that mean that I'm not the same person? So how is it that I might be becoming? What is it that I'm becoming besides my parents? You've seen those commercials, right? When we become our parents. What is that, Progressive Insurance or something like that? Some of us are terrified to become our parents. And some of us do not become our parents. Was it in here that I mentioned that my wife is like is developing the personality of my mother? And I mentioned that to my older daughter, and she agreed with me. So she sees it too. So what does it mean that I am becoming? Or what does it mean that you are becoming? What are you becoming? Well, the easy one is you're becoming a rising senior. You'll be seniors next year. You are in the state of becoming that creature, that being. There's something that's coming that, hopefully you'll be prepared for. We're all in a state of becoming. It's good to be becoming. An article halfway down on page 3 suddenly leaps out at it. Girl takes own life. Oh God. He skips to the middle of it. Carbon monoxide poisoning. 19-year-old Skokie girl dead in her car early Saturday morning. She had been reported missing the night before by her father, Raymond Aldrich. He goes back to the beginning of the article. Karen Susan Aldrich of 3133 Celeste, Skokie, Illinois, dead on arrival at Skokie General Hospital. Hose attached to the car's exhaust pipe was drawn through a rear window. His body is suddenly numb. The words thicken and swim before his eyes. Oh God, oh no, oh God. His head filled with strange sounds, a tuneless humming, like violin strings. His body trembles. We're in shock, Father told reporters. Everything going so well, I don't believe it. He folds the newspaper carefully, holds it carefully on his lap, rocking slowly. He is dizzy and sick at his stomach. That's shock. Conrad, what's the matter? His grandfather stands over him, the newspaper in his hand. Are you all right? I'm all right, he says. He can hardly hear himself. The sounds inside his head are so loud. His grandmother is there, and there's more talking. broken pieces of conversation that he cannot follow. Her hand is on his forehead. You don't feel hot to me. Is it a headache? A headache, yes, he says, getting up. I need to go to bed. I'm tired. Let me get you some aspirin. You see, you don't get enough sleep, and then you work outside and get chilled and overtired. You're going to bed, his grandfather asks. At 7 o'clock? I'll get you the aspirin, she says. Never mind, I don't need it. He heads for the stairway, holding himself stiffly upright. In his mind, he sees himself putting his feet, one before the other, on the steps, carrying himself upward. His body feels nothing. Fully awake, he lies on his side in the bed, memorizing the lines of the desktop, and above it, the half-inch ridge of desk pad, the chair beside the desk, the precise angles of his school books piled up on the chair. His eyelids feel dry and scratchy. So safe, floating in the calmest of seas. What happened? What happened? A stone bench outside the hospital where they sat for hours, soaking up spring and its sunshine. Leo with them laughing and joking, Karen's legs swinging back and forth, and the blue cotton dress clings to her slim body. Her hair long and black, freshly washed, shines flatly against her skull, smiling at him. A dimple appears in her cheek. What happened? What happened? Crawford, you liar, you promised. You said you were never wrong. Oh, Jesus, God, please. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about this. Let me sleep. God, let me sleep. Eyes closed, a knee in his back, hand at his neck, forcing his face into the floor of the elevator, rough under his cheek, smell of vomit and matted fur. God, don't hurt me. Struggles against the indignity. His pajamas pulled down around his knees, a needle sunk deep into his thigh, twists and moans, and all of it loose like water. Flowing salt tickles the inner edges of his eyes, into his mouth, twists onto his back, arms over his head. Raw wails of anguish break off in pieces, hurt his ears. Baby, it's okay. Leo is over him, lifts, coaxing. Let's get up off the floor, huh? Arm around his waist, sags heavy, his wrist aches where Leo holds him, dragged along the watery dark. He rolls off Leo's shoulder to the bed, eyes closed, hands folded in prayer between his legs, can't look. God, don't hurt me, please. Shock. His mind egg-shaped, gray, loose tracing of paths over it, rat scratchings, white hospital gown, gentle Leo helps him into it, never hurries him. Old friends in the steel and white room greet him with smiles. Here he is. Just lie back and relax. Head on the pillow, that's it. Get him ready. Shoot him up so he can't move, can't get away. Leo smiles down at him. His face is purple in the light. His teeth glitter. Easy now. You know it doesn't hurt. No, but afterward, exhaustion. Fatigue that moves outward from the center of him, flowing like warm oil in his veins. He can't lift arms or legs. His ears ring. His head light and empty, all rat scratchings erased, and Leo feeds him. Atta baby. Eat some peaches. So strong, powerful stream of consciousness. His body jerks awake. His hand reaches for the lamp. He turns it on, lies motionless in the sudden bright light. He's in the narrow twin bed in his grandmother's spare bedroom. Blue bedspread, blue and white striped wallpaper, blue and white rag rug on the floor. Everything in order. No good. No good to think about it, about anything. It will not change. Just as before, it is done. He wills his mind to drop him under, to let him pass through into dreamless sleep. Sits against the wall, cool at his back, in only his shorts. The door locked. Testing. Only testing. Tension of skin, sharpness of blade, thin threads of blood well up from scratches. His legs, his arms have no feeling in them. Draws the blade down into his left wrist, a deep vertical cut. The artery bubbles up like a river, widens, does it again to his right arm. Warmth and color floods the room. He's free at last, comforted. It crosses his mind to compose himself for dying. Awkward. There is nowhere to put his hands. The blood makes everything slippery. Lies on his side, using one arm as a pillow. He sleeps. And then arms tied his jaw aches. Something hard pinches his mouth between his teeth. To keep him from swallowing his tongue, they say. He knows better. It is how they punish you for failure here. And someone crying, Lord, what has he done? What has he done to himself? He awakens to fear again. His mouth dry. For terror-filled seconds, he doesn't know if it is happening all over again, or worse, that time has tipped backward and it is happening still. Numb with fear, he scrambles out of bed, pulling his clothes on over his pajamas. The house is dark. It hovers around him as he fumbles for the stairway, fumbles for his jacket in the downstairs hall closet, quietly feeling for the handle of the front door to let himself out. He walks swiftly, without direction, to calm himself, to get away from dreams because there are worse ones and he doesn't want to remember them, doesn't want to think at all, less intense, but how to do it. To concentrate on that is to at once accomplish the opposite. A phrase attaches itself to his mind. Why a kid would want to hurt himself. A swift sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach as he remembers another newspaper article about him. The police chief was quoted. He couldn't understand why a kid would want to hurt himself like that. Crawford had let him read it afterward. He had tried to explain that he had not been trying to hurt himself. He had merely been trying to die. No, you do not slash yourself in a dozen places if you are merely trying to die, nor do you overlook the full bottle of Valium beside the razor blades in the medicine chest. Not for him, that quiet, dream-drifted road outward on sleeping pills. Too easy and too neat. Oh, God, why then? He stops walking. The sidewalk is shadowy, the air around him still and cold. Stiff black limbs arch over his head. The black houses crouch, ready to spring. He is shivering, his skin clammy and wet underneath his pajama top, down his back, under his armpits, freezing out here. Ahead of him, a car approaches. It pulls to the curb opposite him. Police car. The door opens and he has a sudden urge to run. Swiftly, he puts it down. He stands still, shoving his hands into his jacket pockets as the cop crosses the street. Where are you headed? Nowhere. He wets his lips nervously. Just taking a walk. Pretty late, isn't it? After 2. Where do you live? 1430 Heron Drive? He's surprised at how calm, how normal his voice sounds. The cop frowns. Long way from home, aren't you? He is given his home address. He takes his hands out of his jacket pockets, lets them hang limp at his sides. See, I'm harmless. I'm okay. I'm staying with my grandparents on Green Bay Road. Where do they live? For a moment, he panics. He cannot remember the number, and he stumbles over the words. It's a gray house, black shutters, on the corner of Green Bay and Booth. 5135. What's the name? Butler. Howard Butler. Yeah, okay. The cop smiles then. I know the house. They know you're out? He shakes his head. His hands are sweating. His wallet is back on the dresser, in the bedroom. Suppose they should ask him to prove who he is. Will they take him to the station? Call his grandparents? What's your name? Jarrett. Conrad Jarrett. Well, listen, Conrad, I wouldn't walk around here this late. Too many nuts in the world these days. You want to ride back? No, that's okay. You better head back then. They might wake up, be worried about you. Yeah, I will. They drive off. He lets his breath out slowly. Even manages a wave as they signal to him from the car window. Too many nuts, meaning you aren't one of them. All the outer signs must be right. Haircut to the right length, polite answers, expensive suede jacket made in Mexico. You're all right, kid. Ordinary. This event, walking the streets at 2 o'clock, is ordinary too, but something is wrong about it. Something not normal. What is it? He cannot remember. He's shivering again. He wipes his hands on his pants, zips his jacket up tight. Turning, he follows the disappearing taillights, 2 red eyes in the darkness. Ordinary. The door is unlatched as he left it. He slips quietly inside, goes to the kitchen, to the sink, where he hunts in darkness for the faucet and a glass. He drinks greedily, then lets the cold water run over his hands. Still in the dark, he makes his way to the den at the back of the house. No lights. He doesn't want to wake them. No going back to bed either. Not safe there. He sits upright in the chair beside the door, his arms along the armrests, not leaning back. Unforgivable. It is unforgivable. They wrestle with the boat together, the sails snapping like rifle cracks in the wind. Get it down! Get the goddamn sail down! Grabbing at Gray, a billowing mass, sticky and wet against his face, it smothers him with its weight. A loud crack and the terrible rolling begins. Everything out from under the water, closing over his head. He fights his way back to the surface, screaming, emptied of everything but fear. Buck! Buck! In front of him, a hand stretching out, an arm along the upturned hull, water crashing against him, pushing them apart. Buck yells, "Kick off your shoes!" Mindless, he obeys, chokes as water closes him off again from the moon, from everything they collide in the water. Buck grabs his shirt. "Hang on, I'm going to go under. Have a look." He screams at him. "Don't go! Don't go!" And the wind takes it, throws it back into his face. Buck is already gone, and above him the sky lumpy with clouds. Black. It is painful to breathe, terrifying. He must turn his head away from the dark shape of hull, from safety to do it. Buck surfaces beside him, shaking hair from his eyes, gasping. "We screwed up this time, buddy. He's going to haul ass over this." They stare at each other, and Buck breaks into a grin. "Well, you got any ideas?" He shakes his head, biting his lips to keep back the terror. "Always thinking, aren't you?" And he finds his voice then. "It's not so goddamn funny, Buck," he soothes him. Okay. They'll be looking for us. They're looking now, for sure. Just hang on. Don't get tired, promise?" he says. "Don't you either." And they stop talking then, address themselves to the dull, dogged task of enduring. And the clouds level out. It starts to rain. Hours into the night, they hang 2 fish caught and strung off the sides of the boat, arms straining, hands numb with cold. The water is icy, laced with foam like root beer. "How long you think it's been?" "I don't know. An hour? 2 hours? Oh, hell, longer than that, don't you think?" When did it happen? When did they stop calling to one another from opposite sides of the stern, where they hung for better, more even balance? Did he think it was over? "Man, why'd you let go?" "Because I got tired." "The hell, you never get tired. Not before me, you don't. You tell me not to get tired, you tell me to hang on, and then you let go?" "I couldn't help it." "Well, screw you then." Unforgivable. And his grandmother crying at the funeral. Poor Jordan. Poor baby, he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to leave us like this. And he had answered her, saying coldly, "Why did he let go then? Why didn't he hang on to the boat?" And he was punished for that, because afterward, everything made him ill. Food and the sounds of people eating it, crushing, breaking, slurping, smells. He would lift a glass of orange juice to his mouth, inhale the acrid odor of dirt and dying flowers. Even to think about eating made him gag, and for weeks afterward, not being able to sleep. That was punishment too, being forced to submit over and over to a hopeless rerun of that day, to what could have been done to make the sum of it different. Nothing. That is the nature of hell, that it cannot be changed, that it is unalterable and forever. Was it painful? He cannot believe so. If it was, he would have cried out. He would have known it, and he could have stopped it. He could have said, "Buck, take me with you. I don't want to do this alone." He's awake again. No more. No more. He gets up quickly, goes to turn on the television set, kneeling beside it as it warms up. An old set. The images are snowy. The brightness hurts his eyes. He tunes the sound down and goes back to the chair, focusing his eyes in concentration on the screen. His hands smooth, the worn denim of his Levi's His hands smooth the worn denim of his Levi's methodically as tears fill his eyes, run down his cheeks. He feels the sudden chill prick as they drop from his chin onto his jacket. Nearly morning now. Outside the window, he can see faint streaks of light separating the trees from their background of sky. 6:30 already. On the television, a sunrise semester course in astronomy. Soon the light inside the room will match the grayness on the screen. He gets up again to go to the bathroom, taking a leak, washing his hands, staring at himself in the mirror. He can barely make out the contours of his face. His heart is pounding slow and full, keeping time with the cracking headache that is ignited behind his eyes. He leaves the bathroom, going to sit in the hallway, beside the telephone. It will be 7 soon. People get up then. It is not too early to call. He looks up the number in the book, on Judson Avenue in Evanston, his home number. Waiting, he stares at the faded wallpaper, a pattern of eagles and stars in gold and blue and dull red. As he traces it with his eyes, another pattern emerges, wings and talons, a sideways stripe across the wall. It begins to move and his stomach heaves. He quickly dials the number. It is Berger's voice at the other end. Hello? This is Conrad, he says. Tears blind him. His throat closes up. Conrad? Are you there? I need to see you, he whispers. Yes, okay. Can you make it to the office in half an hour? Come in through the back? The front doesn't open up until 8. I'll prop it for you. All right. He replaces the receiver, goes upstairs for his wallet and his keys. He scribbles a note to his grandparents, leaving it on the telephone stand. Had to leave early. See you tonight after school. The writing looks stiff and jerky to him. Nearly light as he gets into the car. He wipes his eyes, wipes his hands on his pants again. This is how people get in accidents. Keep calm. Keep calm. He grips the wheel tightly, his wrists aching, his head throbbing as the grayness around him washes away to chilly March sunshine. It is thin, without power. A huge truck, gears grinding, lurches past on the Edens, and he fights the panic that engulfs him, trying to think of nothing but the mechanics of driving. Now a red light. Now stop. Now watch the car in front of you turning left. It feels like the very first time he's been behind the wheel. He tries to stay in his own lane, tries not to swerve, to keep his foot on the gas constant and even. He focuses his eyes carefully on nothing but the road ahead. So again, we go all the way back to that very first page. Belief of some kind, bumper sticker, if you will, people in cars on busy freeways call to each other. And then we've got another question. Where was it? Page 2. Are you on the right road? How do you know when you're on the right road? How do you know? How do we ever know when we're on the right road? It's the road you're on. The road you are on is the right road. That's why you have to pay careful attention to your road. Chapter 27. The light is on, and he pushes the door open. He stands a moment in the waiting room. You made good time. He moves to the doorway. Berger is in the corner, filling the coffee pot. He says over his shoulder, "Are you going to come in and sit down?" Outside the window, down below, a truck rattles slowly up the street. He's fumbling for the zipper on his jacket, but he cannot find it. There are pockets of tears behind his eyes. His throat aches. He stands motionless in the doorway. It might help if you just let it out, Con. Not the words, but the use of his name that releases him. And he comes slowly forward to sit in front of the desk. The tears roll down his cheeks. I need something. Okay, Berger says. Tell me. But old and powerful voices slam into him. He covers his face. He's back in the hospital again. Back in B ward the night of the burning. Robbie Clay, his friend, a bachelor-certified public accountant, the joker, always laughing. His sister had committed him. First, I was a certified public. Now I'm publicly certified. That night, no jokes, no laughter, but an agony of sound, the roaring of a bull. Robbie had burned himself with matches, a rag tied around his waist, soaked in alcohol. Where had he gotten it? Nobody knew. They knew only that he had hurled himself into the void. It could happen to any one of them. It lay like a disease over the floor. The nurses walking by, talking late that night. They passed his room, and he heard the words penis, scrotum, and thigh, and a wave of dizziness, nausea sweeping over him. He had gone to stand facing the corner of his room, hands on the wall, and Leo had found him. Baby, he's okay. You don't have to worry about Robbie, he had snarled. Stay the hell away from me. But Leo would not. He was the only one who could get close when he was begging loudest to be left alone. Laid his hand on his back. It isn't bad. He's going to be fine. But of course, he wasn't fine. Moved that night up to 3 and never seen again. Buck, Robbie, Karen, everyone he touches, he has a sudden vision of himself naked, tied down on a table, his penis, scrotum, and thigh cut away. I can't, he cries. I can't. He drops his head on his arms. You keep at me, make me talk about things I can't talk about. I can't. Is that what you came here to tell me? He lifts his head, holding himself tight. Control. Control is all. He tries to clamp his throat shut over it, to stifle the sound, but he cannot, and he begins to sob. A high, helpless, coughing sound. There is no control anymore. Everything is lost, and his body heaves, drowning. His head is on his arms again. The smell of old wood is in his nostrils, the warmth of his own breath against his face. Oh, God, I don't know. I don't know. It just keeps coming. I can't make it stop. Don't then. I can't. I can't get through this. It's all hanging over my head. What's hanging over your head? I don't know. He looks up dazed, drawing a deep breath. I need something. I want something. I want to get off the hook. For what? He begins to cry again. For killing him. Don't you know that? For letting him drown. And how did you do that? Berger asks. But it is coming from some part of him that is separate and unknown. He is helpless against it. Hits his fist hard against the desktop. I don't know. I just know that I did. Head cradled on his arms again, he sobs. Cannot think, cannot think. No way out of this endless turning and twisting. Hopeless. You were on opposite sides of the boat, Berger says. So you couldn't even see each other, right? He nods his head as he sits up. He scratches his cheek, staring at Berger through the slits of his eyes. The itching creeps downward under his pajama top. And he was a better swimmer than you. He was stronger. He had more endurance. Yes. So what is it you think you could have done to keep him from drowning? Tears flood his eyes again. He wipes them roughly away with his hand. I don't know. Something? It is always this way. His mind shuts down. He cannot get by this burden, so overpowering that it is useless to look for a source, a beginning point. There is none. You don't understand, he says. It has to be somebody's fault. Or what was the whole goddamn point of it? The point of it, Berger says, is that it happened. No, that's not it. That is too simple. Kiddo, let me tell you a story, Berger says. A very simple story about this perfect kid who had a younger brother, a not so perfect kid. And all the time they were growing up, this not so perfect kid tried to model himself after his brother, the perfect kid. It worked, too. After all, they were a lot alike. And the not so perfect kid was a very good actor. Then along came this sailing accident, and the impossible happened. The not so perfect kid makes it. The other kid, the one he has patterned his whole life after, isn't so lucky. So where's the sense in that, huh? Where's the justice? There isn't any, he says dully. Berger holds up his hand. Wait a second. Let me finish. The justice, obviously, is for the not so perfect kid to become that other perfect kid for everybody. For his parents, his grandparents, his friends, and most of all, himself. Only that is one hell of a burden, see? So finally, he decides he can't carry it. But how to set it down? No way. A problem without a solution. And so because he can't figure out how to solve the problem, he decides to destroy it. Berger leans forward. Does any of this make sense to you? I don't know, he says. I don't know. It is a very far out act of self-preservation. Do you get that, Con? And you were right. Nobody needs you to be Buck. It's okay to just be you. I don't know who that is anymore, he cries. Yeah, you do, Berger says. You do, Con. That guy is trying so hard to get out, and he's never going to be the one to hurt you, believe me. Let him talk. Let him tell you what you did that was so bad. Listen, you know what you did? You hung on, kiddo. That's it. That's your guilt. You can live with that, can't you? Cannot answer. does not have an answer. He leans back against the chair. He feels as if he is seeing Berger through a curtain of mist. The air shimmers between them. He's lightheaded, his bones fragile, without substance, like scraps of paper. The thing that hurts you, Berger says, is sitting on yourself, not letting yourself connect with your own feelings. It's screwing you up, leading you off on chases that don't go anywhere. You get any sleep last night? He shakes his head. How about food? You had anything to eat since yesterday? No. He starts to say that he's not hungry, that he's too tired to eat, but Berger is on his feet, heading for the door. And he stumbles along behind him, unable to voice a protest, down the stairway and out into the street, dragged along by the force and flow of Berger's monologue. Geez, if I could get through to you, kiddo, that depression is not sobbing and crying and giving vent. It is plain and simple reduction of feeling. Reduction, see, of all feeling. People who keep stiff upper lips find that it's damn hard to smile. The restaurant is called Nick's. The lettering is spread in red block letters across the front window. It has a dirty, neglected look about it, but inside it is clean and warm and cheerful. Berger picks out a table by the window. He pushes back the blue and white check curtain so they can look out on the street. He orders for them both. Coffee, orange juice, toast, bacon and eggs. He spreads his napkin across his lap, looking around, smiling at everyone. The two plump, dark-haired waitresses, Nick in the kitchen, a table of burly Greeks. Conrad sits in the chair, hands between his legs. He's exhausted, his eyes swollen, tight. He looks down at his hands, at his fingernails, bitten to the quick again. He doesn't remember doing that. Narrowing his eyes, he blends everything to gray. The curtains, the walls, painted with huge atomic grapevines and leaves, the dark, gorilla-like man across the table from him. The little girl in Skokie is what started all this. Am I right? Berger asked quietly. Crawford called me last night. He was pretty shook, too. Oh, God, he says. Berger hands him his handkerchief. Kiddo, you know the statistics. Out of every 100, 50 are going to try it again. 15 eventually make it. He had thought himself empty of tears, but without warning, they start up again. He covers his face with his hands. Don't, he says. The waitress brings their breakfast, and he blows his nose, then props his elbows on the table. She was okay, he says. She was fine, into everything at school and happy. She told me to be less intense and relax and enjoy life. Shit, it isn't fair. You're right. It isn't fair, Berger says. I'm sorry. I'm damn sorry for her, the poor kid. Crazy world. Or maybe it's just the crazy view we have of it. Looking through a crack in the door, never being able to see the whole room, the whole picture. I don't know. He runs his hands through his hair. Listen, eat, he says. You'll feel better once you eat. But he's too exhausted to eat. He takes a few tentative bites of the eggs, pushes the plate from him, no go, too risky. Come on, Berger urges. I can't, he says. His legs feel as if they're weighted to the floor. I don't know what I would have done if I couldn't have gotten you this morning. I felt so shaky. And now, he closes his eyes, still shaky. Berger laughs. That's what I like about you, kiddo. You got style. Listen, what happened this morning was that you let yourself feel some pain. Feeling is not selective. I keep telling you that. You can't feel pain, you aren't going to feel anything else either. And the world is full of pain. Also, joy, evil, goodness, horror, and love. You name it, it's there. Sealing yourself off is just going through the motions. Get it? He opens his eyes to study the ceiling. Too tired to comment, even to think of a comment. Go home and get some sleep. You look whipped. I can't. My grandmother would hassle me all day. I can't take the flack. She might even call my father and tell him I cut school. So go to your own house. You've got a key, haven't you? He sits up. Yeah, I do. I should have thought of that. Berger laughs again. You would have. When are your parents due back? Not until Wednesday. Okay, go home, rest up, eat something. Here? Should I come tomorrow for my appointment? Sure. It's okay for me to go, you think? What do you mean? You don't think I'll do anything crazy? Like what? Berger asks. Give yourself a haircut or something? You're a big boy. You're not going to punish yourself for something you didn't do. All right. And anyway, punishment doesn't do a damn thing for the guilt, does it? It doesn't make it go away, and it doesn't earn you any forgiveness. No, he says wearily. So what's the point of it then? Berger walks into the car. As he gets in, tears well up again behind his eyelids. For so long, he has shielded himself from hurt, not letting it be inflicted upon him. Suddenly, he is naked, unprotected. The air is full of flying glass. All his senses are raw, open to wounding. He wipes his eyes. I'll see you tomorrow. Drive carefully. He lets himself in through the kitchen. The air inside is heavy with the sweetish odor of too ripe fruit or furniture polish. He goes upstairs to his bedroom, laying his keys and his wallet on the dresser, opening the window slightly. He turns on the shower and strips down, leaving his clothes in a pile on the floor. He gets in, adjusts the water to as hot as he can stand it. He does his best thinking in here. The heat relaxes the clots inside his brain, making the juices flow, and he leans his forehead against the wall, hands behind his back as the warmth spreads downward from his neck to his shoulders, his buttocks, the backs of his knees. Closes his eyes, sees Berger, a confident, sly gorilla, riding a unicycle in a red felt jacket, eating a banana. Berger smiles and waves. Gorillas don't ride unicycles, though. The only one he's ever seen sat inside a huge truck tire suspended from a chain in his cage at the zoo. He rocked back and forth, sticking his tongue out at the world, making judgments. He and Buck pondered the primitive intelligence of this gesture. People laugh, but maybe he knows something, Buck said. We wouldn't laugh if he gave us the finger, would we? Guilt. Guilt is not punishment, Berger said. Guilt is simply guilt. A run-in he and Buck had years ago with a clerk in a drugstore. He said they had not paid for 2 comic books. Wouldn't believe them. He had threatened to call their father and expose them to the world as liars and thieves. Go ahead, Buck said with scorn. My dad knows we don't lie, and he knows we don't take things. What do I care what you think? But he, Conrad, had cared desperately and had felt, even as he knew he was innocent, guilty and shamed by it. Why? Because it has always been easier to believe himself capable of evil than to accept evil in others. But that doesn't make sense. The clerk in the drugstore wasn't evil, just mistaken. Bad judgment doesn't make you evil. Can he only see these 2 opposites, good and evil, innocence and guilt? Is it necessary to believe others guilty in order for himself to be proved innocent? There's a way through this, an opening, if only he can find it. He stands very still, letting water sluice over his shoulders and river into the creases of his stomach to his crotch. Come on, no, I changed my mind. Come on, you promised. Why do I always have to go first? They're 8 and 9, the leader and the follower, as always, in the garage that day, with the door closed, stuffy and hot in here, and Buck is abruptly disgusted with him. Ah, forget it, big-ass baby. I said you could do it to me after. Buck turns away, tossing the clothesline to the floor, and as always, with freedom in sight, he opts for prison. It is easier to face than Buck's cool contempt. He stands obediently still as Buck ties his hands behind his back, sits then as the rope is lashed around his ankles. Buck pulls a handkerchief from his pocket. How can you make me talk if you gag me? And Buck considers. First we torture you, then we make you talk. But he's no longer sure. Turns his head just as Buck discovers you don't need permission when you have the power. Forces him back against the cement floor, sprawls across him while he ties the handkerchief around his mouth. It is clean and smells faintly of his father. Abruptly for him, the game is over. Terrified, he struggles to free himself, fights the gag, choking a peculiar hollow, clanging sound, the garage door opening. A shadow falls across them, a cool breeze entering. What the hell is this? He is pulled to his feet, the ropes roughly loosened, the gag snatched from his mouth. Not relief, but horror, as he sees Buck's pants jerked down to his knees, his father's hand cracking across the bare ass. Buck howls in protest while he stands in helpless terror, waiting for his punishment. Only a game, but they had both been playing it. And then his father's anger is mysteriously spent. and he kneels on the garage floor, an arm around Buck's shoulder as Buck is sobbing, his head down. Don't you ever do a thing like that again, Bucky. You understand? But I wasn't going to hurt him, Daddy. People get hurt without anyone meaning it. Don't you see? For some inexplicable reason, he was left out of this, passed over, his shame and guilt ignored. It must have been too monstrous to mention. His crime, his part in it, and so he had to suffer alone. But what for? There is no evil there, after all, just a boy's game. Dangerous, maybe, but not evil. And not Buck's fault, not his either. Nobody's fault. It happened, that's all. Not so frightening, is it? To believe them both innocent? Oh, God. His sinuses are packed with a spongy material. Tears leak out from beneath his eyelids. Resigned, he lets them come as he soaps himself carefully. His arms, his shoulders, and his back, his legs, between his legs. He stands and lets the water run over his head, washing his hair. When he's finished, he gets out, towels himself dry. Slowly and carefully, he turns his arms up to look at the insides of his wrists. In grade school, a girl named Sally Willett sat next to him. She had taken his hand in hers one day, those strong brown fingers tracing the creases in his palm, showing him his lifeline, curving beside the heel of his hand almost to his wrist, a deep and definite mark. He draws a ragged breath, wondering about Karen, about her lifeline. Was it a long one too? Tears of grief this time. Not fair. Not fair. No, but life is not fair always, or sane, or good, or anything. It just is. He hangs up the towels in the bathroom and turns off the light. He puts on clean underwear, picking up his dirty clothes, throwing them down the clothes chute. All the while, the hot, oily liquid seeps out from beneath his eyelids. He continues to blink it back, to wipe it away. Reduction of feeling. At least he's not guilty of that today. He sets the alarm on his clock radio, stripping back the covers on his bed. He climbs in and cleanliness surrounds him. Its smell cool and seductive. He rolls to his face, and without a sound, without a thought, he sleeps. So we punish ourselves for things that are so often just not our fault. And why do we do that? Why do we do that? It's pretty awful. The things that we are capable of doing to ourselves is pretty awful. Chapter 28. The air is balmy and fresh as they sit on the patio, watching the boys swim. It is too cool this evening for the adults. And besides, Cal is content to sip his martini, savoring the sharp juniper smell of it as it mixes with the heavier perfume of the surrounding air. Magnolia. Around the pool, the stiff, straw-like grass gives off a mossy odor. Ward raises his glass. To your low total the first day. No, Audrey says, to that 30-foot putt on the 15th hole. I was poking everybody around me. Hey, that's my brother-in-law. You did look good, Cal, Beth says. He grins at isolated moments. Well, you didn't really expect to win, Ward says. Hell no. But that is the funny part. Or maybe not so funny. After Saturday, when he saw that he could do it, that he had a good chance of doing it, he had tightened up. Those 3 double bogeys on easy holes, if he could have dropped a few more lucky putts like the one on the 15th, you didn't expect to win. Maybe that's it. You get what you expect. Why don't we go out and celebrate anyway, Ward asked. How about it? You both like Mexican food, or we could go to the captain's table, whatever you want. That'd be nice, Audrey says. Let's go there. I'll check to see if we need reservations. What time? 9, 10? Whenever you say. Audrey gets up too. I'll put some hamburgers on for the boys. Keep an eye on them, will you? Beth nods, and they are left alone on the patio as Charlie and Carrie splash and shout under the diving board at the opposite end of the pool. Having fun, he asks her. She smiles. Yes, are you? Sure. Sorry you didn't win. Me too. 3rd place is good, Cal. 3rd place, he says, sipping his drink, is 3rd place. I've been thinking, she says, that we should play more golf together. Maybe our next vacation should be strictly golf. We could go to Pinehurst or Myrtle Beach. Sounds great, Cal says. I bet he'd like that too. A short silence. Then, Do you do that deliberately, or is it a reflex action? I'm curious. Do what? Insert him into the conversation. Whenever I mention you and I doing something together. Sorry, he says. You said vacation. I guess I assumed that you meant him too. I'm surprised that you haven't felt the need to call him since we've been here. I was going to do it tonight. She laughs. It must be hard to grow up when your father is breathing down your neck all the time. I think I would hate it. He gets up, goes to stand near the edge of the pool, watching Charlie tip himself off the end of the board, backward, arms outstretched, screaming. The drowning man bit. He gazes then at the magnolia tree, those pink knots of petals glowing eerily in the dusk. Behind him, he hears the patio door slide open. Ward says, everything all set, 9:30. We got time for one more round, folks. I don't think I'll have another, Beth says. I'm going to dress. Nothing fancy, sissy. You look fine just the way you are. Best time of year to be here. Everything fresh and green. Later on, Audrey told him, the sun, the heat, bakes everything, people and plants, to a hard nut brown, and you have to stay in, out of it. You live the air-conditioned life, pure and perfect and artificial. He turns and hands his glass to Ward, who's come up beside him. I'll have one. Light on the vermouth, okay? Always, always. And again, he lets himself drink too much. Not out of boredom this time. Out of anger at her, maybe. Out of fear. Out of whatever it is that is happening to them that he does not want to see and doesn't see when he is high and feeling good. One more! Ward is gay when they arrive home. Clinking bottles at the bar, he and Audrey giggling together as if they didn't know how they had been used tonight. Intermediaries. She would not look at him all night. They skirted the edges of conversations, shielding themselves from each other, letting Ward and Audrey do the work. Without speaking now, without looking at each other, they sit on opposite sides of the small, cozy living room. The silence between them far from empty. It is hostile, full of unspoken words. From tonight, from before tonight, from who knows how far back. He doesn't. He is sure she doesn't either. But he's sick of the brooding, sick of dwelling. Nothing gets spoken, nothing resolved. Circles and more circles. There's a bottle in the garage, Ward is saying. Honey, would I let us run out of Tia Maria knowing how you love it? Oh, yes, you would. I wouldn't. I bought it, I swear, this afternoon, only I set it on the workbench. Well, get it. You come on with me. No. Come on, I've got something else to show you. Ward, you're rotten. But she goes with him, and they're left with the silence. Beth picks up a magazine and leafs through it, and his anger ignites. Why don't we finish it, he asks. She looks up. Finish what? What you started out there tonight. I started? How did I start it? By suggesting we go away together on a vacation? And I didn't stop it either. You did. You were the one who walked away from me, remember? What the hell was I supposed to say to that? The old song and dance? I overprotect. I breathe down his neck? You do. It's a matter of opinion? Right. So there's no point in discussing it further. We never agreed. I think there's a point. Why are you so obsessed? She snaps. God, I am sick of talking about him. He controls you even when he's not around, even when he's 2,000 miles away. Oh, stop it. We haven't exchanged a dozen words about him in months. That isn't the problem. He isn't the problem, isn't he? No. So let's talk about what's really bothering you. Oh, no. Let's talk about what's really bothering you. That's what you want, isn't it? That's why you go around moping and depressed just the way you used to, as if it helped being half alive, dragging everybody else down with you. What the hell are you talking about? Talking about last year? Last spring when you couldn't answer the phone, couldn't open your mail without wondering if it would be the hospital with more bad news? God damn it, sure, I was depressed, but I wasn't too depressed to go to Europe, was I? I wasn't too depressed to take you to Spain and Portugal. Goddamn Spain and goddamn Portugal. If you're going to quote him, then quote him. I'm not quoting him. I am quoting myself. I am. He struggles for control. His senses blurred. Important. This is important. Don't screw it up. Don't get off on old songs, old dances. I am asking you to tell me, he says slowly, what I've done that's made you so angry with me. It's not what you've done, she says. It's what you think I've done. What you've done. He lets the words sink in, trying to get the message. There is no message. Nothing coming through. I don't know what you mean. I don't think you've done anything. Oh, you liar, she says bitterly. You do, and you know it. You blame me for the whole thing. For what whole thing? That whole vicious thing. He made it as vicious, as sickening as he could. The blood, all that blood. Oh, I will never forgive him for it. He wanted it to kill me too. And suddenly she is crying. Painful. Desperate sobs that shake her shoulders. Her hands are over her face, her head bent to her knees. Bewildered and frightened, he goes to her, kneeling beside the chair, trying to put his arm around her, but she will not permit it. Leave me alone. You got what you wanted. Leave me alone. I don't want any of your goddamn false sympathy. Beth, I love you, honey. Please, let me help. He fumbles stupidly at her side, and her head jerks up. She looks at him stiffly, her eyes hard. Help? What do you mean, help? I don't need it. Not your kind of help. I can help myself. Carefully, she wipes her eyes. Ward and Audrey are standing in the doorway. Hey, Ward says softly. Sorry about this. We don't want to butt in. You're not butting in, Beth says. She starts to cry again, and Cal stands up, turning away from her, close to tears himself. He goes to the window, looking out at the pool, at the shadows of trees and bushes on the cement. Don't you understand what he was saying, she asks. He was saying, look what you made me do. Why, he asks. Why was he saying that? I don't know. I wish I knew. She sobs, and then her voice is calm, more subdued, and she speaks slowly. I just know how people try to manipulate other people. Oh, God, Beth, I don't believe that. I don't believe he went all that way to try to manipulate us. What happened, what he did it to himself. Can't you see anything except in terms of how it affects you? No, neither can you, neither does anybody else. Only maybe I'm more honest than the rest of you. Maybe I'm more willing to recognize that I do it. You're right, she says, her voice low and strained. He didn't do it to you. He only did it to me. I don't know what he wants from me, and I've never known. Does he want me to throw my arms around him when he passes the chemistry exam? I can't do it. I can't respond when someone says, here, I just did this great thing, so love me for it. I can't. I don't think he wants that, Cal says. I think he just wants to know that you don't hate him. Hate him? How could I hate him? Mothers don't hate their sons. I don't hate him. But he makes demands on me. He tries to blackmail me. She looks up at him. Where did you get that? About my hating him? Did he tell you that about me? Is that what he told you up in his room? Beth, and you let him say that to you? Her voice is trembling. You see how you accept his feelings without question. But you can't do the same for me, can you? Ward moves toward her. Honey, I don't know what you want from me anymore, Cal. I don't know what anybody wants from me. Honey, nobody wants anything from you, Ward says. We all just want, Cal and Con and everybody, we all just want you to be happy. Happy, she looks at him. Oh, Ward, you give us all the definition, will you? But first, you better check on those kids every day to make sure they're good and safe, that nobody's fallen off a horse, gotten hit by a car, or drowned in that swimming pool you're so proud of. Beth, Audrey says, turning her back, her hands to her face. And then you come and tell me how to be happy. He closes his eyes, not listening anymore, letting blackness surround him. Blackness into last year, when he stood outside the bathroom door, begging to be let in. No sound. The silence was screaming at him. He didn't want to know, didn't want to believe it was happening. Con, open the door, let me in. His shoulder bouncing, crashing against the door, the jam splintering, giving way to the nightmare of blood, the towels soaked with it, leaking their overflow onto the rug, the floor, his arm curved, hiding his face, a sea fan of dried blood on the wall behind his head. And in the hospital, let me die. His eyes bright with the drugs they had given him, strapped down in the high, crib-like bed, his face pale against the green emergency room sheets. I want to die, in shock, watching the bottle upside down in its rack as it drained healing liquid into that arm. In shock, unable to think, already broken by the note they had found on his desk. I wish I knew why, but I just don't. After the accident, after they had towed the boat in on the way from the dock to the hospital, he had moaned over and over, Mama, I'm sorry. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That second time, there had been no apology. A bloody, vicious thing. She's right. It hasn't killed her, but it has done something to her, something terrible. Circles and more circles. Where does it end? How can it end? What are those circles? What do you suppose those circles are? Any thoughts on that? What those might be? It's pretty heavy. I think part of it is that throw a pebble into the water and you get those ever expanding circles. I think that might be what they're referring to there. So what are your thoughts at this point? Do we have any thoughts at this point? Everybody at home? Thoughts? Katie?
Okay, I might not be like right on this, I don't know, but did Conrad and Cal just like try both killing themselves?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, just
I
Conrad.
didn't know what I was like.
Yeah, just Conrad.
Okay.
You know, the assumptions that we make about other people's actions. So often we don't even know why we do what we do. I think it's unfair of us to judge why somebody else does something that, ultimately hurts us. And those things are often just accidental mistakes. People make mistakes. But there's something, Beth is a little bit different. So, we have, how many pages left? 23 pages remaining. We are going to finish it up next time. We're going to look at some video, possibly an interview with like the cast, the people who played the characters next time. And certainly we'll take a look at anything from the study guide that you might have questions about. Like I said, I'm going to open that up. I'll create some sort of assignment so that you can submit those. If it turns out that you'll need extra credit for the test that we'll take next Wednesday. Does anybody have any questions about schedule, so on and so forth? Questions, comments, thoughts? Nothing right now? Okay. So we're getting to a point where we're seeing Conrad recovering, obviously, while simultaneously Cal and Beth seem to be falling apart. What is that all about? What is it that is enabling Conrad to recover? And what is it that's pulling Cal and Beth apart, do you think? You have any thoughts on that? Opinions on it? What is different about their relationships, I guess? So much of our success in so many areas is dependent upon communication. And our ability to communicate with people in our lives, to our ability to communicate within our relationships, I just told my seniors that, part of the reason that with my English degree I'm here as a teacher is because I didn't explore any other options. I'm glad I didn't explore any other options. I feel like, I'm in the place where I am supposed to be, that I'm on the right road. But there have been moments in my life, for sure, where I've wondered whether or not I was on the right road. And I can point to my inability to communicate with people I might have communicated with about, what my options were, what my alternatives were. So many of our conflicts, our struggles, are the result of a lack of communication, an inability to communicate with people who we need to be able to communicate with. Whether it be parents, relatives, siblings, teachers, bosses, employees, vice versa, that sort of thing too. So even people who don't necessarily have a position of power need to also be communicated with from people who do have certain power and authority. Otherwise, there becomes frequently, miscommunication or the absence of communication, and conflict results from that. You've got to be able to talk to people and communicate with people. It's how we go about understanding one another. Okay? So folks at home, there's about 2 minutes left. I'm going to go ahead and let you go.